a couple of surveys in the new Landonline. We start with a land XML import. I'm joined today by Jeremy Gatzel, one of the cadastral surveyors in Linz, and he will chip in while I'm doing things in Landonline as well. So yeah, bye from both of us. We'll kick things off with just a little bit of housekeeping. So just through the demo part of the section, I've just turned off. We've got the ability for you guys to speak and share your cameras turned off, but we'll have a section for Q&A at the end, and we'll turn all of that on at that stage. The chat has been turned off in the meeting, but Q&A has been turned on. So if you look on your screen at the moment, you should see a button with like a question mark and Q&A underneath it. That's where you'll be able to ask questions throughout the meeting. And we're using that just because it allows like a thread on each topic. So yeah, chat turned off. If you want to write a message while we're presenting, use the Q&A feature. And yeah, during the session where we're going to open up to the floor to talk, if you could just use the raise hand function built into Teams, and I'll address people in the order they raised their hand, but I'll cover that again later. Right, that's housekeeping done. So let's get into it. I think, I guess some important framing for the session is at some point in time, Legacy Landonline is going to look like this. So really each of those red dots there, there'll be a point at some stage in the next few months where those buttons are essentially grayed out. And the only thing you'll be able to do in the legacy system is plan generation and sign and submit. So we're going to have this stage where surveyors are preparing their capture and completing that in the new system, and then they're doing plan gen and sign and submit in the legacy system. And we've actually already had our first firm nominate to have this all turned off in Legacy Landonline for them. So yeah, that's, I think, kicking off in a week or two. So yeah, it's all coming around kind of quickly, I guess. Yeah, I think it's all. Oh, the other point to make is that all the other parts of Landonline outside the kind of survey subsystem, so things like search, my messages, will also still be available in the legacy system. Excellent. Next slide, please, Anne. So the other side of this is the application's been built over the last couple of years, and surveyors have been thoroughly involved in the development process. So we started after conference in August 2021, and at that stage there were only 8 people using it, and then over the last 2 years the functionality's grown and grown and grown, and it got to the point where there's, I think, something like 1,100 of the 1,900 surveyors had access to it and were using the new system by the time it went live to all surveyors on the 31st of March. And I just think it's a good measure when a surveyor's willing to, person who doesn't work for Linz or anything is willing to put their hand up and say, you know, give it a go. It's much easier than I ever thought it could be. So there's Michael Coase saying that. Thanks, Michael. Excellent. So this is where I'm going to jump over to a demo. So I will share my screen. If Jeremy, you could just confirm once that. There we go. How's that?
Yep, it's the one. That was good.
Cool. So I'm starting at the Linz webpage just to show you how to navigate to the new system. So you land on the Linz webpage like this, go to products and services, Landonline. This is the same flow presumably used to log into Legacy Landonline, and you'll see that we've got Legacy Landonline there. To log into the new survey app, we choose the survey login button here. Now I'm in a demo environment today, so I can't do that. So I'm just going to jump over to a separate tab here, but that would be the flow you'd use, and it would take you to a page that looks just like this, where you can type in your username and password, which is the exact same username and password you'd use in the legacy system. And we've logged in. So here we are on your My Work page, and what this does is it lists out all the surveys you have underway. So any survey that's visible in the legacy system will be visible here, and vice versa. over the next wee while, and eventually we'll get to that point where you kind of open them up and there's not much you can do on them, but for now you can start them here and finish them in legacy and vice versa. Key features to call out on this page are, if you are a member of multiple firms, this will be a drop-down box where you can click it and choose a different firm. You've got the hamburger menu up here where you can change your password. That will also change it in Legacy Landonline. There's a few other features in there. And there's this kind of 9x9 grid up here, and that allows you to swap between a couple of different apps. So I'll just call those things out. In terms of the My Work section, basically the My Surveys tab lists out all the surveys where you're either enabled, primary contact, or assigning surveyor. And then if you want to filter down to see just the ones where you're the primary contact or signing surveyor, or where you're just enabled, you can toggle through those. And finally, you can see all the surveys in the firm you're currently logged in as listed there. Me. So today I'm going to attempt to hopefully get through 2 surveys, but I sometimes find I talk a bit slower when I'm presenting, so hopefully we don't run out of time. So I'll create a survey by clicking the plus button up in the top right here. And I'm going to create them under digit. You can choose the firm if you're a member of multiple firms. So this will be demo 1, LT. So I'm just using my keyboard controls to tab through these boxes here, and this one is in Hawke's Bay. Cool, it's created the survey and added it to my list here. My understanding is most of you at this point would take that number and type that into your survey software and then use that to spit out your land XML. Today I'm just going to fix that up in the system. I'm going to open up this survey just by clicking on that hyperlink there. And it takes me to kind of a default view for the app. So we've got 3 main features to look at here. Up in the top left, we've got a few kind of generic things like what's new. That'll take you to a list of all the changes that have happened in the application throughout time. You've got a feedback button. You can click that and it'll take you to a form for a chance to give feedback. Definitely encouraged to use that as frequently as you can. The more the better. And don't be worried, someone else has provided the same feedback. We know if we get the same feedback over and over again, it's really critical. So listen through your feedback. There's help. I'll talk a little bit more about help later. And we've got the exception request option here too, so that you can prepare an exception request about this survey. On the left-hand toolbar, we've kind of got your surveyor workflow. So it starts out with land XML import, and you kind of work through your marks, vectors, parcels, capture, and so on and so forth. And I'll be working through those steps today. And then on the right-hand side, we've got the tools that sort of interact with the map. Things like zooming in and out, zoom to my survey, turning layers on and off, inspecting information from the underlying data. I'll do a little bit of that today. Picking an area to select and kind of manually regenerating your whole survey. You don't need to use that very often because everything kind of regenerates as you go, but every so often you can make a mess, and it's helpful to just hit regenerate and it redraws the whole lot for you. So I'm going to get on with importing my first land XML. I'm preparing this survey now, so I choose the import land XML, and you've got an option here of either drag and drop. I'm just working off one screen today, so I'm just going to click in this space, which pops up the box, and I can just choose the land XML I want to import. So it runs through a bunch of steps here and gives you some information while it's working through it.
One of the good things about the drag and drop is that you can drag it from emails or stuff like that as well. You don't just have to have it in your tree.
So that has run through, and my survey has come in. So we're doing a 3-lot rural subdivision here. This was a real job provided by a real surveyor, and it wasn't staged at all. So it's literally just, can you give me an XML? And this is what I've received. That's what they had pre-prepared. So we'll work through the process for just finishing off the capture on this. So working through our workflow, first thing is enabled users. So if you open it up, you've got two tabs here. The My Firm tab lists all the people in my firm. And the external surveyors tab lists, you can add people from other firms. So I'm just going to add Jeremy in case I have a power cut, and he can carry on the presentation. Cool. In terms of assigning roles, that's the other thing you can do here. So with the ... option on the right, if I click that, I can choose to make someone either a primary contact, assigning surveyor, or both. So that's how you can set those controls. That's all we need to do in enabled users for today. At this point, you can run pre-validation. I can see that not that many of the underlying marks have been linked in this case, so I'm not going to run pre-val now in this scenario, but that is an option there. It has been improved so that it will run all the way through, even if you've got something like a TA missed or those types of issues that currently prevent it being very useful. Okay, the next tab is the survey details tab. So I'm going to open that up. In here, you've kind of got the survey header information. So I'll just work through these one by one. Land district, territorial authority. That has actually populated on import now based on where the parcels in the survey are. Got survey data set. This is class B, LT subdivision, no vertical data. Hawke's Bay 2000 is correct. Description is correct. This is a good time to note that the new app is autosave, so you don't kind of have to click save or anything after you make these edits. So for example, if this was wrong, I could just change that to an 8 and close this, and that will be saved. So it's a little something to get used to. Happy with my survey reference and data survey. Next one is reference CSDs. These are all here already. I'll just quickly add one to demo it, where you just click add survey down the bottom left of the panel. You can double click in the cell to edit it. Type it in and it will find the surveys that match that. And double click in the cell to enter it. Oh, so that's all done. I'm just going to clean that out because it's just making up data to demo it. Awesome. Next panel is our marks panel. Yeah, if you hover on them, it does pop up with a little name there to show you what they do, but you get used to the symbols reasonably quickly. I was a bit nervous about them at first, but pretty handy. So this is a good time actually to mention a few of the functionalities built into every panel. So if you click anywhere on this blue area at the top, you can drag the panel around in the map. If you click the question mark, it will take you to help. So I'll do that now. And what you'll notice is I've clicked on help from the marks panel. So it's taken me to the help about marks. And you can see you can navigate into the sections within here. And you know, if you want to go back up to the higher level, you can see the other help content there too. The next pretty handy feature, not so handy today because I'm sharing a single screen, is the pop-out window. So if you click this button, it puts that panel into a separate tab, and that tab you can put on a second screen. So really handy if you're working on two screens, you can have that kind of maximized on the other screen. And it can also interact with the map while it's like this. So I click that on, you'll see that that's highlighted mark number 1 pink there. I can pick things in here and they'll highlight on the map, and vice versa. If I unpick it in here and pick it in them, yeah, you'll see it as highlighted in that the panel. This is a good time. I'll just go back into popped-in mode. You'll note I didn't fix up my land XML to match my survey number here, but it's another good thing to demo is if you click on any of the column headings here, you can sort by them. So in this case, I'm going to sort by CSD reference. I'm just going to scroll through and find I've got all these orange triangles next to my new marks. The reason that's showing up is it's saying the plan reference does not match the CSD ref. So it's expecting, because it's a new mark, that this number should match that number up there. And what I can do to fix that up in this case is I can just pick the top one of these, scroll down to the bottom one, hold down Shift and click. That will highlight all of them. And then if I just reset them to new, it's just a little trick for getting your CSD refs to match this number. It will go through and change all of those up to match my current survey. Those same interactions work for everything though. So if you wanted to update many purposes or many things in this panel, you can use that same shift functionality, and then you can either click these one by one to select many, or you can hold control and click on the map to select many things at once too. Excellent, so that's a bit tidier. I will clear my selection from map. Okay, and now mark linking. So automatic mark linking can be found from here. So I'm just going to run it with a 100 mil or 0.1 meter tolerance here. Hopefully a fairly familiar experience. If you click it and it thinks for a bit, and then you get a result. So you see there's 128 marks in my survey, 22 were linked before, 72 are linked now, and still 56 marks not linked. So I'm going to have to do some work to link my marks. Just before I jump over and finish my marks linking, I'll just mention this button here. It's been quite an asked for feature, as all the panels have this export as CSV function. And so people are asking for an easy way of kind of coming up with a way they can validate between the survey software and what ended up in Landonline. So if you click that out, it'll spit out a CSV, and then you can do whatever you want to compare that in Excel or something like that. Right, mark linking. So it's a good rural job. So there's plenty of mismatches. So I'm going to do some manual mark linking. So there's, for me, the easiest way to kind of figure out which marks need linking is just to enter the mark linking mode. And I can do that by right clicking and go and start linking marks. What that does is it should turn on all the underlying marks. There they are, just took a while to load. So now I can see my marks and I can see the underlying marks in an orange mode there. So I can just go through, and there's this instruction panel here. So select the capture mark you want to link. So in this case, I want to link that one there. And now it says you've selected this mark, select the underlying mark you want to link it to. So just bear with me while I run around the survey doing a bit of linking.
Also notice when Nick right clicked on the spatial view, it came up with a few other options as well. So we call that the context menus. And so depending on what you've got selected, if you've got a line or a vector selected, it'll give you different options within that context menu. So also a question came in about bearing corrections in the survey header. So when we were populating, or you saw those added in the reference CSDs tab on the survey details panel. So yes, it's a good idea to make sure that you've got all your reference CSDs in there, and you make sure you put in the bearing correction you want to apply to adoptions from that plan or those plans. And then when you select those, select the vector in the vector panel to be an adopted vector, you can select the source there and it'll automatically populate the bearing correction for that from what you've put into the reference CSDs panel, tab. We'll be able to demo that later on in the vectors panel.
On the CSD rest, another one that does come up a bit is people ask about whether you can enter nothing, and you definitely can. So you just make sure it's empty when you save it, and it will allow you to save an empty value against one if you haven't determined a bearing correction.
as Nick said, it's a typical rural survey where you're having to, there could be a bit of distortion between the marks you've captured and the marks that are in Landonline. So it's always just a good idea to go around and manually link those ones that are definitely separated. It helps when you go to do your automatic linking. And before you do automatic linking, it's like legacy. It's always recommended to link at least 2 marks manually. Then it obviously puts the connections there.
Getting pretty close to being the whole way around now. Hopefully the lag between my screen and what you're seeing is not too bad, but I'm sure you get the concept of what's going on here right now. Right.
There's a slight lag, so it is when you get to use it, the application yourselves, if you haven't already used it, you'll see it is a bit smoother than this.
Cool. I think I have finished my mark linking. That's the most painful bit of it all, sorry, so it should be a bit smoother from there. I'm just going to give a quick scroll through my marks panel and make sure I don't have any more of those orange warning triangles before I move on to my vectors. Now the vector panel is much the same in terms of how you interact. I might just add one vector temporarily and then delete it to demo the process. So you can either click add vector, or if you want to insert it in a certain place, you can click the ... and go insert vector above. I swear I didn't have a cough until about 12 o'clock today. Here we go, add vector. So you see it just adds a row. And yeah, so you can just sort of tab through these, click enter to open edits on any of the ones you want to edit.
And you can see when you edit the row, it automatically populates most of the data with the information from the row above, the last row in the list there. And then you obviously got to go through and change it to appropriate values.
Yeah, cool. Another one that I forgot to mention before is this column visibility. So you have the ability to turn off a column. So say, your survey doesn't have any arcs in it, you could just say turn off the radius one, and then that won't be there for you to have to tab through it while you're in here. I'm not sure if that feature's made it into production yet. I'm in that kind of demo environment. That's where things are before they go into production. So hopefully they'll be there in the next few days. And I'm just going to.
I was going to say, Nick, do you want to demo just the bearing correction there? So just to show how the bearing correction comes through with the bearing source.
Yeah, cool. So I will pretend that I've adopted this from survey. So when I choose, do I have any that are not 0? Probably 0. Yeah, they are, but so it's kind of hard to demo. But at the point I set that, if it was different, it would have updated that bearing correction for me, which is definitely pretty handy.
We could just go back and change it to change one of the bearing corrections there and then just adopt it again.
Okay, so you can see it's pulled that through and it was set. So good benefit of making sure they're set up front. And it does allow you to come and change them if you had one vector where you really wanted to record it differently. But it's a good way to protect against sort of making intentional mistakes. I'm just going to delete that vector now. The other thing I noticed while I was running around my mark linking is that this line here has accidentally come in as a primary. So what I'm going to do is I'll just click it in the map. That'll scroll the panel to that line and select it for me, so I can see it's this one and I can see it's a primary. I'm just going to make that non-boundary. Save that, and you'll see it will update in the map to a non-boundary line calculated symbology. Cool. I think that's everything we had to do there. So we've done marks and vectors. This survey does have a few irregular lines. They've been captured in survey software and uploaded. Just open up the panel. So we've got these two here. I can click them and they'll highlight on the map to show me which one's which. Cool. I'm not going to demo these two, but I'll just mention it, and there are good videos around it. But if you want to geo-reference an image, you can do that using this button. And if you want to draw an irregular line, you can use that using this flow. Quite a lot of work's gone into simplifying those processes, and they also have checks involved to help present you kind of making mistakes that you don't realise about how the system works and the order you get to do things. Right, I'm going to work through and generate the water boundary attributes for this one. So these two are actually both water centerline boundaries. No physical feature in this case, and it's going from 6457. This one's actually the exact same. Cool, so the beauty of doing that there is that stuff will flow into PlanGen for me. Nice. Oh, I skipped over existing parcels by mistake, which is one of the things I was meant to warn you not to do. So, not a very good example there. So before we do our irregular boundary capture, it's really good to do your existing parcel capture. It's less relevant if you're not capturing the lines, but still just kind of encourage you to do things in this order. It is also one of the differences from legacy is that there's now an existing parcels panel and a new parcels panel, and the existing parcels panel includes the ability to add the estate records, formerly known as comprised in references. They've been pulled out of the survey header and linked up here. So if we go add and remove existing parcels, it takes me to a mode where I can just click underline parcels. I can click one on, I can click back off if I didn't want it. I can click the button to add that to my survey. You can see that defaults to extinguished. If I wanted to make a reference or something like that, then I could. And estate records. So this is where I can go add record, add to row, defaults to title. I can change it to Gazette Notice or other if I need. And you see this orange triangle, it's just wanting me to enter a record. This is quite a handy feature. It actually pulls through the linked titles in the system to the parcels that have been extinguished. So you still need to like validate it for yourself to make sure it's right, because those aren't always right, but they are more often than not. So I'll choose that one. And then the other thing here is that it's actually pulling through the legal description from that title. So I know from my survey that I'm trying to subdivide lot 2 DP575209. So it's great that that's come through. And I also can see here that part of that title was section 3, SO 474266. So potentially I need to record an affected parcel and do something with amalgamation conditions. Today. So that was the existing parcels and estate records. I accidentally already did the irregular lines and we're into new parcels. So these have already come through in my survey. Just like legacy, we do need to unlink one and relink one. You can see I've still got some existing parcels selected. That's what all this pink highlighting is here. So what I'm just going to do is right click. Deselect features. The other option is you can press escape and it will clear any selected features that you have. Just tidy things up a bit. So I did the ... unlink. Now I go ... to link it. It still runs those missed mark checks. And see there's these 2 optional missed marks. In this case, if I wanted to include them, I would just click on it, click on them and adopt the ones I want. In this case, I don't want any of them, so I'm just going to go ignore. It's found the parcel ring. I'm going to choose it and go link parcel. Nice, so that's been done. Now my title allocation. So title allocation has been pulled out of its own kind of place in the app and linked up with the new parcels in the same panel here. So what I'm going to do is just create 3 new titles. That's added in there, and I'll add 1 to each of these. So I can just, if the row is selected, I can just tick the box here, or alternatively, I can just double click here and choose the one I want. Title allocation done. Schedule memorandum, I'm not going to cover off here because I'll jump into that other survey to demo that. Looks like we're on track for time. Survey report. This is the digital survey report, so it's really you just type stuff in here, choose the yes or no options as appropriate, and you'll see that there's these kind of check boxes to at least check that you've finished off each of the sections, and you can use them also to navigate to the sections in the report. But you can still upload a survey report as a supporting document. Attaching supporting documents, this is the panel to do that here. So I'm going to click add supporting documents. Same again, you can drag and drop or click browse. I'm going to drag and drop in this case. So I'll just click these 4, drag them into there, and I can go through and choose the types. Create survey report, schedule memorandum, and cover sheet. I can say my calc sheet. This is to, and then I'm going to attach files, and that just works through the process of uploading them. Oh, there was a little box that popped up there warning me that the files have been converted to grayscale, and what it does is it puts this little symbol here of one of your files had to be converted to grayscale after uploading it, and that's just to help you know that you need to go and have a look at it to make sure it is still readable. That all looks readable to me, so I'm happy with that. Excellent. I'll skip PAC, so we'll do that in the next survey. So that to me is looking like I've finished my capture for this survey, and now I would continue on by jumping over to Legacy Landonline and working through Plan Gen using the process that you're used to. Just one little thing to note, you can have Legacy Landonline and you can have the same survey open in both, but one of them will be put into a read-only mode. Whichever one is open second will be in a read-only mode. So if I wanted to open this survey in Legacy and start work on it, before I do that, it's good to use this back button to get out, and that will release the lock straight away. Whereas if you just exit it, it can take like 30 seconds or something like that to release the lock. So just encourage you to use that back button to close your survey before you jump over to Legacy Landonline and open it up and keep going. Have I missed any key points, Jeremy?
Always good to run pre-validation before you do that, though. So
that's the key point I missed. Wicked. Pre-val, run. So we did quite a lot of work looking at rewriting the messages that came out of pre-val, and then we realised that Legacy Landonline needed to say the same thing while they're both running in parallel. So it's been parked as an improvement until later. Potentially, unfortunately, but the language for all these will be quite familiar. I'll do my fixing one or two of these, I think. So mark 129 is missing a northing and an easting. So I'll go to my marks panel. I can just type in 129 up here, and you see it's got this warning symbol there. That's saying the same thing. This mark has no coordinates. I'm just going to delete that. It's kind of an Auckland mark that I don't need in my survey. what else? Those are all the same ones, essentially. Haven't done plan gen, makes sense. I've got some names and types that differ. Oh, actually, that's one of the things to mention here is you can either get these out of here and into your survey report by copying by section. So these are preventing submission is like the new word for fatal, and warnings is like a combo of warnings and conflicts and legacy. Or alternatively, if you want the entire report, just like if you get out of legacy, you just hit the download button here. And that will give you this kind of text file that hopefully you're reasonably familiar with. And if you want to rerun pre-val, it's just on this button here. Do that, and hopefully my warning about that mark having no coordinates is gone now. Excellent. Do I miss anything else, Jeremy?
No, I don't think so. One of the things we probably should mention with supporting documents is just that we've noticed that some users have been unable to view the supporting documents. In that case, firstly, just check and see that your browser isn't blocking those. So sometimes it's blocking pop-ups, and just check that first. And if you change that setting, and that should allow you to view the documents. It often happens when you have the supporting documents in a popped out window. So yeah, just something to be aware of.
Excellent. Well, Jeremy was commenting there. I've just created another survey that I'm importing, and I'm just going to jump through the steps I've already demonstrated quite quickly, and then get over to demo the schedule memorandum functionality and the TA certification functionality. Oh, so that's come in.
Or good to know as well, you may have noticed before when you create a data set, it automatically assigns the creating user as the primary contact and assigning surveyor for that, and automatically adds them as an enabled user. So you can see the purple plan reference in the middle of lot 1, or on the boundary there of lot 1. So that's obviously just been brought through from the XML import, and you can just obviously add other references, survey references if you want to, just by right-clicking on the spatial view and selecting that from the context menu as well.
One thing to note is before you get to the schedule memorandum panel, you definitely want to make sure that you've added your existing parcels and added the state record or comprised in reference for the underlying parcel, because that can help to pull through the what's the word I'm looking for, the instruments that you, or the creating documents for your existing easements. Oh, so I've just kind of rushed through those steps to get through to parcel capture being completed. It's just following the exact same process as previously. So now I've demo the schedule memorandum, so we'll open that panel up. First step is to create a table. Choose my table type. In this case, it's a memorandum. Choose to add an empty row. These warning triangles are just telling me I need to populate all this information. So double click to edit. This is a right to drain water. I'll just mention that. So you have the option of double clicking in these cells to choose from a list, which is quite easy when you've only got one, but on those kind of more gnarly surveys where there's lots of them, you can actually choose from the choose the dropper and then pick them spatially. And it's particularly handy when you're trying to get kind of whole runs of them and there's quite a few parcels to deal with. That's interesting. Seems like with a little bug where when I choose it spatially, it wasn't populating the burden range for me. Good to pick that one up. Something to work on. Yeah, cool. You see when you choose it from the list at the moment, it populates the burden land automatically, or otherwise you can double click on it to choose something else, or use the dropper to pick it from the map. You know, I'll choose the benefited land from the map too. Oh, so that's an example of adding something reasonably simple into the schedule, which is enough to demo the functionality. If you want to spit it out as a PDF, just so you can say, share it with the solicitor or something, you can click this button. That gives you something like that. And when it's time to attach it to the survey, you can click that button there and it will add it to your survey as a supporting document. Good. We've already done previously demoed supporting documents, so I'll jump to TA certifications on this one. So that one's an odd one out. It doesn't open in a panel within the same page. It takes you to a new page. And what I'll do is I'll create it. So I'll enter my TA reference for the thing. So it might be and I can create a new package. And it'll remove certificate. So this one has 2, 3, subject to easements, and 2 to 4. I think I will just highlight, find it particularly useful for the amalgamation conditions. If you're trying to figure out which one of these you need, you can just click the arrow down and sometimes find reading that easier to figure out which certificate I need than remembering I need a 2201B2 certificate, but maybe you can remember that. So now that I've ticked those on there in my my package here, and any of these features that show up with the dash underneath are editable. So I know some councils get annoyed about doing that, and so they might want a change to be something like that. Cool. If you wanted to add a second package for the 224, you could remove the 224 from here. Create a new package and add it into this one. Awesome. What have I missed now, Jeremy?
Well, it was pretty good. A couple of things just with other questions that had come through were just about spell checking functionality in the survey report. So there's no real option to do a spell check itself to start a spell check. It does when you're actually typing stuff in. It should actually identify misspelt words or the words that are supposedly misspelt, like with the red underlined line there, and you can actually go and amend them through that way. So there is that functionality there.
Yeah, so it's just a built-in browser. You can just right-click on anything that's underlined and choose the autocorrect.
Yep. You can also just type all this information into Word or something like that, and then copy and paste into here as well. So it's another way of doing it.
The one track for that is just making sure that things like bullet points or special symbols come through properly.
Yeah, the other one, another question that came through was about downloading XMLs from the survey capture application. So I don't believe that's functionality that is here as part of the survey capture application. I think you have to correct me if I'm wrong there, Nick, but when you do submit the TA certification, does it still come up with the option to download an XML at that stage?
I'll say I'm about 90% sure that happens. Like, it's been a long time since I've used it, so I can't quite remember, sorry.
It did about 2 weeks ago when I tried it, so we'll say that it still works that way. But also there will be, you can obviously still go into search and legacy and download XML data that way. If you do it via, when you submit the TA certification, that's obviously just creating an XML of the captured data. But if you're wanting stuff which is not in your survey, you obviously go back to search and download the XML data from there.
Nice. So we're at the end of the demo. So I'm not sure if it's Hannah or Bridie or someone running the meeting. Now's probably a chance to open up people's abilities to comment and turn on their cameras and raise their hand if they'd like to ask any questions out loud.
That's all done, Nick. If anyone's got any questions, they're good to go now.
I'm just seeing a couple of comments in the Q&A, so I'll work through these just in the order they're listed in my Q&A. Sorry if it's not the order they were asked in. So is it possible to write easement schedule purpose manually? Yep, so I'll add one of those now. So I can just add a row, double click and choose other, and then I can write whatever I want. Hopefully you don't use that because I'm not sure it'll make it through, but it's just to demo that ability, and then it's either press enter or tab to save. Can you download signed 223 and 224 certificates? I don't know this off the top of my head. Jeremy, do you know the answer to that?
No, I haven't. Don't know that one.
We'll
have to find out and get back to you.
Yeah, we'll circulate a response to that one. There's a chance they end up in your supporting documents once they're signed. Yeah, no, we'll come back to you on that one. When you add a bearing correction on the header, will it auto-populate the marking vector capture? So it's kind of a little bit of a yes. It won't go back and update all of the ones that already exist in your vector capture, but if you add it in first and then you do the marking vector capture, then it will be there for you.
If you do make a change to a bearing correction, though, you can obviously go back into the vectors and do a sort on that that plan reference, and then obviously just do a multiple or select the multiple lines for that plan reference and just apply that bearing correction again.
I'll just demonstrate that briefly now. So let's pretend I've somehow stuffed up my bearing correction on this DP 19016. I just click on this column header here to sort by that, scroll down to the first one, scroll to the last one, hold down shift and click, and then I can double click any one of these, any one of these, and correct it. And that will update for all of them.
So the question then, Nick, how do we view underlying vectors and marks?
That's a good one. I can demo that. So you'll notice I didn't really have to use the layers panel too much through this process, but this is one time when you may want to do it. So the first thing is to interrogate it. It has to be turned on the map. So let's say I want to interrogate some underlying marks and some underlying vectors. I need to make sure they're turned on. I can then use this dropper tool, inspect and adopt it's called, to click on them and get info about them. So you see that's an underlying mark. It's called DCDB at the moment. Some order 7, so on and so forth. I can do the same with a vector. And if I wanted to adopt those or add them into my survey, I can do that using these tools here. So I've got an adopt multiple vector option or adopt this vector option. That would add it, like pull it through from the legacy system into my survey. And that same concept is actually how you process balance parcels as well. So if you chose a parcel and you wanted to do the process balance parcel boundary because you're going to be accepting it, you can do that using this option here. If we haven't got any new questions yet, that just triggered my mind. I think it's worth pointing out. I'm just jumping over to the help. So I've just chosen one of the question mark options in the app to take me to help. It's taken me straight to use the inspect and adopt tool. But one thing I'd encourage you to do is just jump over to the help and have one skim through this key differences with legacy. I think if you read through that information once, it kind of is just there in the back of your mind. And when you go to do something that kind of you already know what's going on. I think we've called most of them out today, but I think it's just a useful way of kind of letting that information sink in.
What about if I've got my own memorandum, Nick, and I want to attach that? How do I go about doing that?
Yeah, cool. I can demonstrate that too. So that would be a supporting document. So I'd go to supporting documents, add supporting document. I'll browse, and in this case, I've got one here. So I'll choose that and go OK. And I just choose the document type of schedule memorandum, and could say this is my own little note there and go attach. Things begun particularly slowly today, but here we go. And it's done that note again, degradation converted to grayscale, and I've got the symbol there to say it's converted this thing to grayscale. So I know I need to go and check it to make sure it's still readable. And I'm happy with that. That all looks like it makes sense to me.
What about in the marks? If I want to just turn on all the underlying 5th and 6th order marks, can I do that?
Good question. So to do that, I go back to the layers panel, expand out the layer, expand out underlying marks, and here I would filter by, so say I only wanted orders 4 and 5, I just turn off all the layer orders, turn 4 and 5 back on, and then now only order 4 and 5 ones are visible, so you can see that one there as one of those. And if I wanted to know more about it, I could use the inspect and dot tool to click it and see that it's an order 5 because it's due to that code. Also worth noting that when you apply a filter in one of those, it does show up with this great thing here to say that layer has been filtered. So even if it is turned on, it's not showing you the entire layer. I just picked up there actually in the easement schedule question included Excel, so I don't believe we support attaching the Excel schedule, so you'd have to save it from Excel to PDF and attach it that way. Well, that's a tough question from Daryl. Jeremy, do you know more about that one? Easement schedules defaults to bird and benefit only, not servient and dominant. Is that acceptable to LINs now?
It is, yeah. LINs will accept either showing burden and benefited or servient and dominant or both. So yeah, it's acceptable.
Maybe I'll just, were there a last couple of slides for me to talk to Hannah, or is that, we all good there? Maybe I'll just mention that they'll be circulated. I think there's a couple of links to some help material there. Oh yeah, highlighting that if you haven't got everything you need from today, there's videos here that you can go back to, and they will always be them or some version of them will always be there in the help section to kind of give you a quick familiarization with the app. Yeah, that I guess the other thing I'd encourage you to do is just to give it a go and have a play at some stage, because eventually it will disappear from the legacy system and yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Nick, for sharing the application and your knowledge about it. And thank you everyone for attending. So all the best with trying out the new Landonline application. And please remember to submit any feedback so we can keep improving it for you.
And there's that email there for you to get in touch if you're worried about anything or have any more questions.
Yeah.
Cheers, everyone.
Cool. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.